You're listening to Free Zone Radio.
For Free Zone Radio, this is With Honors, the Summer Series. As with all our episodes, I think for the most part, these are engineered toward you guys, my students, my classes. But I do want them to be appropriate for everybody out there. Any teacher, any class, any reader could draw inspiration, source material, whatever, value from these conversations. But we're looking ahead at the end of summer break, and I was reminded that I needed to have a conversation with you all, my students, about summer reading. So, why summer reading? I know that as an honors teacher and an AP teacher, I historically have always assigned a little bit of summer reading to you guys. And I have my reasons for it. I think it's just good. I think it's a good habit that, you know, if you're going to be like a weightlifter, if you're going to be a runner and you quit your practice, you're going to fall out of practice. So if we're going to be good athletes, we need to stay in shape. And if we're going to be good readers and good students, we need to stay in intellectual shape too. I think your summer reading is something that you also just need to stay abreast of because the world doesn't stop going on around you either. A common thing that comes up over and over and over in this class is how the experiences we have are what we are studying as human beings. You're taking a class in English. Great. But the books that you read and the essays that you write are not really big picture what most of all matters in here. This is a course in the humanities, and we're studying the larger than the book lessons about what it means to be a human being. The reading assignment does matter. We are taking it for a grade. The essays do matter. They do count for a grade. But if all you got out of this class was just, I read that book, I wrote that essay, I wrote that grammar down, then what have you really done, right? What have you really gained out of the class? We spend so much of our day here in public education in this arena. It's got to matter for something. It's got to count for something. And that shouldn't stop just because the bell rang in May and now you're out on summer vacation. Life is for the living. And, you know, human beings may have a kind of instinct that we inherit from our parents and our ancestors, but we don't get a ton of generational intellectual experience that we're just born with. So that comes to us through our stories. That comes to us through the experiences that we have, that we live. And the only way the next generation gets to pick up on that is if we keep telling them about it and reading about it and writing about it. Some schools don't do summer reading anymore. I think that they've found that, you know, it may be this way in your school district that you just couldn't keep kids accountable. And maybe your district didn't want to fight that fight with certain parents and say, well, here's why it's accountable. Well, most of my students don't do summer reading, but my honors kids and my AP kids do, because you guys are reaching for more than just the McNuggets. You guys are reaching for the advanced opportunities. So if we're going to be advanced, we got to keep reaching for the stars. Also, reading should not just be something that you do during the school year. Like, reading is something that sets us apart from the animals. I know that sounds really stereotypical or cliched, but man, it's true. We have opposable thumbs because we're tool builders, we're creators, and we have intellectual brains with such capacity because we're thinkers. We're living, thinking, breathing beings. And the reading that we do, the writing, shouldn't just be within the confines of classroom 117. I know that you always hear about writers who said, oh, I wrote all the time, or I read all the time as a kid. I was always a reader. A lot of people, though, aren't. And I mean, I was one of those kids growing up. I was always reading. So it just felt natural to me. But the more I grew up, the more I realized that a lot of other people just don't. And when I became a teacher, it dawned on me after reading some of these studies how common it is for people to just stop reading when they're not made to. Again, I was a kid who always had a book in hand. I was a nerd. I can always remember, there's those afternoons you go out to the bike trails and play, or you go wandering off through the fields, or you go to your hideout in the woods and play. You have your friends, you ride off with bikes, but there's still plenty of times Jason Crockett just wanted to go sit in his room and read, or go down to the basement where the hideout den, the rec room was, and, pull some things together, turn on the TV in the corner, and then just sit up and read. Like, I was frequently doing that. I can remember a lot of experiences where we're having to go over to the babysitter's house and it's storming in the summertime and I'm reading in the back seat of the car. As a person who loves to read, those experiences are kind of precious to me. That they're always going to be part of an experience I had that was not just enjoyable, but it also allowed me to have experiences through the lens of other people's lives. Fantasy, sci-fi, biography, whatever. Getting to read those experiences meant a lot because it's almost like I got to live all these other lives too. But people grow up. You live in a world of technology. There's so many distractions that are out there, so many things to keep you going. We love our sports. We love our cell phones. We love our movies. But so often those things take time away from the quiet focus that's required from reading. The world competes for your attention on so many different levels. And I understand it's really, really easy to surrender that willingness to read. But you compare kids who do read to those who don't. You compare kids who were read to as children to those who weren't. And the gains, the leaps and bounds they've made in their school performance, in their perception, in their critical thinking, it's just mind-boggling how much reading really does impact the person. The world really does compete for our attention. And that doesn't stop as a kid either. It continues on through your adulthood. I just said that I was a guy who read all the time as a kid, but then I got a cell phone. And those cell phones got better and better with their apps and their games and their notifications and their click, click, click. It really is a time suck. That into my adulthood, I quit reading for a while. I mean, not entirely, but a lot. In college, I was always around with a book. In high school, my family would always get me one of those big, fat, hardcover Stephen King books. I would get those for gifts. And I felt like such a big macho nerd because anytime I'm reading, people would be like, look at Jason with his big book over here. And there's a kind of, ooh, yeah, I am an intellectual. Look at this. Whatever. That fades away when you have all of these click, click, click video games in front of you on your phone, all these YouTubes that you can be watching, all this social media that you can be liking and sharing and retweeting. And in my adulthood, I largely quit being a reader for years. It was something that maybe I had read once, maybe 2-3 books a year. A year. I didn't really change until my friend group changed. And I started hanging out again with readers. I started working alongside people who were really into their reading. And they're the ones who brought me back from the brink. Getting to engage, you like social media, you like keeping a record of these things, getting to engage with Goodreads and see, what's the mileage you're making in your books? What are your friends reading right now? Staying part of those conversations helped keep me back into it. So what do I expect from the summer reading assignment? Well, if you're a student of mine, or if you're a teacher outside the classroom, here's what my assignment looks like. Every spring, I get a list of kids who are wanting to take my class, and I deliver them the instructions for the summer reading assignment. If you're in my honors class, it looks a little bit different from my AP class, but largely they're the same kind of assignment. My honors kids typically have one good-sized book to read during the summer. But AP, we have so much more to really cover and such a shorter time to do it that I kind of need them to take on the responsibility to do just a little bit more during the summer. So I always assign them two things. Typically, AP reads a play and a novel. But otherwise, everybody's expected to buy a composition notebook, and we're going to make a dialectical journal that's a modification of like an interactive notebook. So many people are coming back to the table about doing interactive notebooks now, especially because, again, we're all kind of worn out from competing for the attention with our devices competing for the attention with our kids and distracting us from our reading. A lot of teachers have made that shift to come back to the pen and paper and less about the devices. But we all get a composition notebook. Students can get one for free from me if they need to, or they can get their own. And I say a composition book, but really it can be whatever the kid wants to make it to be. I want to give them the creativity to go in whatever direction they want to go with. I do give them some sample instructions. First of all, the cover of it needs to be clearly labeled that this is your summer reading journal, and it's got to have your name on it. I should be able to look at the outside of that notebook and not have to hunt and find who is the kid that turned this work into me. Now, you can make that as decorative as you want or as not decorative as you want. You know, sometimes I get girls who are, can I make a scrapbook out of this? Yeah, baby, you can make a scrapbook out of it if you really want to. And sometimes, you know, a lot of times you get the sports boy who's like, I'm going to put my name on the front and just leave it at that. And that's entirely fine too. It's an expression of who you are as a person. Go for it. Then when you get into the inside cover, one of the first things I want you to do is have a table of contents. I tell the kids, wait till the end of the assignment before you fill in that table of contents, because prior experience has told me you're going to start off with something, make a lot of changes, going to feel messy about it, going to want to redo it. So at the end, they do the table of contents. They come back and make that their first page. But why do a table of contents? Because, as with many things in my classroom, organization is key. I just want them to be able to have a final published work of reflection that they can surrender. And when they go back through it for their later reading, writing, Socratic circle questions, whatever, they'll have an organized table of contents that, if nothing else, if they don't want to flip back through it, they can always look and say, what page was that character analysis on? And go find it. Honors typically is expected to write 20 to 25 reflections throughout the summer. It's an arbitrary number. Why go with 20 to 25? I don't want to overwork kids. We're all on summer break. Teacher doesn't want to work. Student doesn't want to work. We're all going to keep up with reading. We do want to make a legitimate effort at being reflective thinkers, but none of us is out here assigning books and books and books of paperwork for them to do. In my experience, I'm coming up on my 20th year right now, 20 to 25 entries has been a good window. When I say 20 to 25, I'm not saying 20 exactly will get you your 100. I always struggle when kids ask, exactly how many reflections do I need to do? And I mean, I get that too. I would have been a person to ask that question. I think a lot of us would. But asking that question leads us to the presumption that there is a baseline number that I have to do to get my grade. And we're so focused on getting the grade. The grade is only part of what this is about. I want to give you a window for where you can work and show me, here's legitimate thinking throughout the summer. If you want to do 20, that's great. That's going to get you a 90. And in our school district, a 90 is an A. It's the baseline of an A, but that's an A. Now, if you want to go above that, you can do extras all the way up to 25 and potentially earn up to a 100. It's not quid pro quo. You don't get the 100 just for having 25 things in there. We got to make sure that this is actual reflective thinking. But I wanted to give you some wiggle room and see, what do you want to be as a student? Show me what kind of person you want to be. This year, it's not just a variety of 20 things, because this year I had my honors students do 2 different texts. They're reading Gareth Hines' graphic novel version of the Odyssey, and they're reading Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. So I divided it up to where I said 8 to 10 of those can be about the Odyssey, 8 to 10 of those can be about The Alchemist. Now that leaves us a window of, well, what else? I wanted to step beyond it because this past year, our class started a classroom podcast, and I want to segue the kids from summer break directly into the work of their content creation. And in order to be better prepared for what kind of content they're going to create, I want them to go out and listen to and watch other related content to the summer reading. So I tasked them with part 3. Go find podcasts to listen to. Go find YouTubes about The Alchemist. Go find YouTubes about The Odyssey. Go listen to episodes of our class podcast from previous sessions. Listen to the summer series. Listen to whatever you like. And then I want you to generate a last, final, third section batch of reflections about those. Each reflection, the 20 to 25, each reflection needs to be its own page, and I would like them to try to fill up the page with whatever this reflection is. Some of those can be just analytical writing, where they're just writing like a journal entry, telling me, I read about Odysseus today. He got stuck on the isle with the lotus eaters. Here's what happened in the story, but man, here's what it reminds me of. Yada, 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 yada. And then they can fill up the page with that. Sometimes they get to do fun other creative activities, and I have an entire batch of ideas they can draw from. They don't have to pick these, but you know what? If you're stuck for ideas, steal one of Crockett's. It might be a character analysis. It might be a casting for a movie of. It might be creating a soundtrack. There's a whole different variety of these that you can pick and choose from. And then they do the same thing with their other text. And then when they go through with their podcast reflections, they're doing the same kind of thing where they're thinking, well, what did the content creator say? Was it good? Was it not enjoyable? I think they missed an opportunity to talk about this. Really, I'd never thought about that before. And this made me think. Just those reflections. Then once everything's said and done, they're going to have that summer reading journal due for me on the first full day of class this August. AP has a similar assignment, but like I said, in the past, honors always just had to read one full-sized book. AP always had to read 2. They read a play and a novel. It's important for me that in AP, we try to cover as many of the major forms of work as we can, but even more important that we dig deep on the ones that we pick. And I hate that phrase. That sounds like such a teacher phrase, dig deep. Where's the rigor of what we're doing? But, true talk, we got to dig deep with the time that we have available to us. I've made that mistake before where we spent so much time trying to cover as many novels or as many plays as possible, but you're only getting an inch deep into them. You're going a mile wide, but really, what are you getting out of them? And when it came time to write, kids couldn't remember anything. So if I can get them to do a couple of those angles during the summer, then we can spend so much more time during the school year talking about them and do a couple of the other major angles as well. In the summer, I asked them to read a play and a novel. So already we're getting drama and novel out of the way. This year and in past years, I've asked them to read a comedy for their play. Why? Because comedies are relatively easy to read and get. I mean, they don't expect a lot of literary, heavy analysis, intellectual superpower to get it. It's a comedy. We can laugh about it. We can get, okay, this is going on, this is going on. I get a few of the main ideas. Let's go. But I always tell the kids, don't overreach for it. Don't overwork for it. There's not a ton of literary analysis that needs to be done on the front end. It's a comedy. Enjoy it. And if you notice some cool other things, great. Add it to your summer reading journal. But comedy is so difficult to teach during the school year because it's just not that funny usually. I've struggled for years to get kids to laugh and enjoy the comedies of the plays. And there's a whole variety of reasons that go into that. We've talked about in previous episodes. You can go back and listen to them. Tragedy has a lot more going for it. So we do get to save that for in-session reading. This year, AP is reading two different texts. They're reading The Importance of Being Earnest, and they're reading The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. Their summer reading assignment is structurally the same kind of thing. You can start off with a composition book or a notebook or a spiral bound or a scrapbook, whatever you want to do. Design the front of it. Let your first page be the table of contents. Go through and number every other page in your journal. And then I want you to split the remainder of it in two with The Kite Runner and The Importance of Being Earnest, and save that last 8 to 10 pages for your podcast reflection, because AP is doing the same thing. They're having to come up with content too. And a lot of these kids I've had in class before, but you know what? If we're going to be readers, we need to read other writing. And if we're going to be content creators, we need to be listening to the content of what's good and what's bad and know what we want to create for ourselves. So we got to be well read and well listened. AP kids often ask too, well, how many entries do I got to do to get a grade on this? The AP and the honors kids are always concerned about that grade. I know. Well, yes, like I said before, the number of entries are important for the grade. So we're still going to do the 20 to 25. If you want to get your 90, you can do the 20. If you want to get your 100, then you can do the 25. But they've got to be real legitimate reflections. They've got to be real writing. We cannot just do plot summary. That has no place in here right now. The number of entries are important for the grade, but dude, life is not all about the grade. And that's something that I know seems counter because we're teachers. This is a class. We want you to get the good grades. Yes, it is important to get the good grade. But my man, more important, if you're living your life well, and if you're making an effort to be the kind of person that would make you proud, if you're going to make an effort to be the kind of student that's going to make this guy proud of you, trust me, you're going to get the good grade. I mean, I think that's another life lesson, is that once you start engaging with the world, it kind of becomes shocking just how many people don't. And we all feel that fraud. We all feel that imposter syndrome that, oh, I'm not doing enough. But really, 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 when you look around and realize that you got up off the couch, you read 2 books this summer, you did a summer dialectical journal with 25, you listened to some podcasts and you wrote about that, you have an idea for what you want your first podcast episode to be about, you are miles ahead of the typical student. You are miles ahead of the typical content creator that's out there. So trust me, if you're living your life well in this classroom, you're going to get the good grade. For me, the summer reading assignment is just about those bigger truths. We really need to read generously before we read critically. I always tell the students that if you're coming together to write your essay, you really are never going to start with the first line and go to the last line and voila, you have a perfectly scripted essay. No. Writing is an organic process. And we live, we change, we revise, we do new thoughts, we may scrap it all, realize we're nowhere, start over with a blank piece of paper, whatever. We get all our ideas together before we start sculpting. No kid, this is a universal truth I tell everybody in class, no kid ever sits on the beach and makes the perfect sandcastle from the get-go. We always have to scoop buckets of sand together. And it's not until we've got our sand scooped together that we can start mounding the different towers of it, that we can start sculpting out the windows and the portcullises and the gate. We have to get all our content together before we decide what's good and what's not. So the same process applies to reading and your dialectical journal. Read 20 pages today. Just read it for what it is. And if you have an idea while you're reading it, jot it down, annotate it. A lot of times we teachers tell kids to annotate while you read, but we don't teach them what that looks like. What does that mean, Mr. Teacher, to annotate? Like, do I just write good? Do I write symbol? Like, what am I supposed to write? Well, that's going to look different for every class. That's going to look different for every reader. That's going to look different. So we need to teach them some strategies. And for right now, if you're reading and an idea hits you, just jot that idea down. If you were reading and you thought, that red bird seems like a symbol, maybe you just highlight the red bird and write symbol. Whatever. Read generously before you come back to it and think critically. What do I think about the passage that I just read today? How does it connect to character? How does it relate to the Bible? How does it relate to that girlfriend that I just broke up with? How does it relate to whatever? Let yourself be surprised by what you find in your reading. But also, my man, let yourself be surprised by what you think in this process too. As a kid, I was always reading, but Jason Crockett was always drawing too. I used to draw comics and art all the time. Let yourself be surprised by what comes out of the page too. We don't sit down already knowing what we think about everything. That's part of this process of reading and writing and having these classroom conversations is we admit we don't know what we think about things. So we're going to sit and talk and ask questions and be surprised by what we do come to find out about things. If it's symbolism, please, for the love of heaven, for the love of heaven, students and teachers out there, don't rush symbolism. You know, Thomas C. Foster in How to Read Literature Like a Professor says that anytime a kid asks him, is this a symbol? He's probably going to say yes. But when they say, a symbol of what? He's going to turn it back to them and say, yeah, I don't know. You tell me. We should not come to the table with an equally scripted list of rules for what that symbol must equal. We always use the parable about the teacher who says, oh, in this scene, the curtains are blue because they represent the depression and the malaise with the modern American capitalist society. Dude, how do you know that? If the author said it and it's in writing somewhere, that's great. But if the author put it in writing and published that work, it's now out of her hands. And it exists in a world bouncing off all the other texts and then landed in my lap. And I read it after having my experience with XYZ today. So maybe those blue curtains represent depression. Or you know what? Maybe the blue curtains were just blue. Maybe they didn't have anything there. You're going to hear Jason Crockett say, don't chicken bone it. And I can explain what that means later in a classroom. But don't chicken bone it. Don't rush. Don't overreach for these things. Let the symbolism come to you. Notice what annoys you. It is valid to be annoyed by the reading. It is valid to be annoyed by the writing of something. It is valid to be annoyed by the character. What I'd urge you to do, as with all of these things, have a little bit of maturity about it. You know, we're all good complainers. Your teacher, Jason Crockett, is a universal pro at being a complainer. But if all we've got is the complaint, who cares? It's a dime a dozen. Instead, have comments about it too. And also maybe a little bit of patience for these things. You know, if the writing was really redundant, let's ask why. Because that writer has a successfully published work in front of you. Jason Crockett picked it for a reason. What could possibly be the reason for the redundancy in the writing? A few years ago, I assigned a great book, Life of Pi by Jan Martel. Don't care what the kids say. They always complain, that book was so boring. He was at sea, at sea, at sea. I know. And, it's valid that you were bored by him being stuck and languishing at sea. But let's ask, why does that happen in the book? This is a successful novel. This is a book that has had a major Hollywood movie made out of it. People out there agree this book matters. So why am I getting stuck by the redundancy? Or if it's a character who's made you really angry, if it's something in the importance of being earnest and you think, you know what, Jack Worthing is just not that funny. That's completely fair. If it's Lady Bracknell and you're thinking, I really don't think she's that funny. I think she's boring. Well, you know what? Your teacher thinks you're wrong, but have that question. Why do I think that this character is boring? Why am I offended by these things? And also, my dude, that's an even bigger one too. We're living in a society that is increasingly offended by the things we see and hear, but really not so offended by some of the more egregious things we probably should be offended by. As a good parent, as a good teacher, yes, I want to protect my students from things until they're ready to learn how to do battle against those things too. But we don't want to just completely shelter our children from things, because then they're never going to be strong enough, prepared enough. They're never going to have the experience to be able to stand for themselves. They're going to intersect with the world sooner or later. And I need them to be prepared for that world. I need them to have an empathy that not everybody lives the way you do, and that doesn't invalidate their lifestyle. That people are people are people. And we're a really broad, messy gallery of beings. That there's so much color, so much difference, so much joy, and so much atrocity that goes on among all of us. We need to have a healthy appreciation that other people's lives matter too. And if I'm offended by it, okay, let's just ask ourselves, why am I offended by it? And let's also ask, is it meritable to be offended by these things? I don't think that we should live our lives that way, because my faith teaches me to live in such a way. But that's my faith dictating how I live. Do I really have the right to impose and enforce my faith, my judgments, my values onto the lives of Shakespeare and Edna Pontellier and Kate Chopin, her writer, and Sherman Alexie and J.K. Rowling? Do I really have the right to impose my views, my beliefs, my faith upon these characters, these writers, these novels, and you know what? The other readers in this classroom? I might want them to share in those beliefs, but just because I dictate that I can't live that way doesn't mean that I'm allowed to dictate he or she or they are not allowed to live life their way. Bring your own experiences to the table, please, by all means. None of us come to this table or this summer reading assignment or any of these texts already knowing everything that we know about this. Amen. That's not what the exercise is. I used to assign a research project where I asked students to go out and find sources that would teach them new things about this career. And one day I had a kid who, he spent 30 minutes, he came up with a 5-paragraph essay and he brought it to me and said, well, I'm done. 30 minutes, day one. And I said, Bubba, hold up. What is this? And he said, oh, well, I just wrote everything I know. Well, you know what? Maybe that's true, but experience teaches me that we don't really know so much as we think we know about things. And B, that was not the assignment. The assignment is not come to the table knowing what you already believe about things. The assignment is also learning to see what other things surprise us. What don't we know about things? Bring your experiences to the table. Absolutely bring your faith, your values, your background experiences, your assumptions about why we do these things. Things you read, movies you watched, whatever. Bring those things to the table with a respect that not everybody believes that way. Not everybody writes that way. Not everybody's going to tell stories or characters that affirm your values. And it's okay to have those notions challenged. I need you, students, to not be a sit and get kind of kid in class. I mean, there's always days that we want to be sit and get. I'm getting ready to start my in-service, and teachers of America, y'all know this is true. We don't want to do the icebreakers. We walk in on day one and we see that they've got chart paper and markers, and we already just get vile and upset about it. None of us wants to be managed like that. I get the appeal of the sit and get moments, but a lot of the time, this should be a living experience for us. I mean, what are we doing here? If it's sit and get, we could just put you on to Edgenuity. We could just put you on a Chromebook, let you click through the AI and say, there, you're done. But I think we all know that's not true learning. That's not living. So I want you to share the class with me. I want you to share your ideas. I want you to come to the table with legitimate questions. You will make me happy, and you will, I guarantee, make me laugh with some of your ideas. Not in a bad way, in a very appreciative school dad way that you will surprise me, and that'll make me laugh in a good way. Just don't make me disappointed by not engaging with the world around you. I think that's one of the biggest problems that I could have, is that we just don't want to engage because it's so much easier to sit. But dude, life is for the living. My daughter just had a bad dream that she woke up from this morning, where she dreamed that there was a council of people who had said, oh, at the time you turn 16, you must surrender yourself to the court and you will be sacrificed. And she was thinking in her dream, this is ludicrous. I mean, I'm already past 16 too. Did we just do this? This is it? And she said, I woke up so frustrated that I was running from people and trying to hide. She said, I woke up thinking, is this it? Is this all I get? And I thought, man, that is the human being question. We often just exist that we have miles of life ahead of us, and not any of us is promised that we have a tomorrow. Not any of us is promised that we have 15, 20, 50 more years. Life is for the living. And I know high school is not the peak of existence, but let's make the most out of this. We are here 5 days a week in this block, getting to read, getting to read during the day, getting to have book club talk about these things, getting to share ideas, getting to ask questions, getting to laugh. And it's such a unique opportunity. Then you're going to get to live whatever life you've got after that. Life is meant for the living. So real quick, why these books? Why would I have picked these books for summer reading? I think sometimes parents get really cautious about, why is he teaching that book? Like I said, we live in a day and age where we're very careful about the kinds of books that we're putting in front of kids. We're very cautious, and there's a lot of censorship about what they should and should not have access to. And part of that, I think, is reasonable, and part of that, I think, is way skewed. So why these books? Well, if I'm thinking of my AP class, like I said, I picked a play, a comedy, and a novel because I'm trying to reach into the major structures of writing, the major types of writing. In the past, I've used comedies like The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare or The Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare, but much more often A Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare. Nobody really bats an eye at Shakespeare. You hear the name Shakespeare and you think, well, it's a brand name. It's got to be Shakespeare. It's got to be good. Just read it. But also, a lot of times kids hear the name Shakespeare and think, uh-oh, I can't read this. It's impossible to read. Nobody even understands this. Well, that's not true. Once you go to read it, it's not that true. And also, it's a play. It was meant to be watched. But I've just had so much struggle getting to find the funny in a lot of these plays in recent years that I get it, but it's just not that funny as it seems like it should be. So I was in the market for something new, and plenty of AP teachers recommend Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. But it is a play that I had never read before. I didn't have any classroom experience with it. I just know it's a successful title. It works well in the AP classroom. It often appears on the exam. Why not? Plus, I looked at the copy of it and it was super skinny, and I thought, yeah, they won't complain about this. So I wanted to pick The Importance of Being Earnest because it's comedy and it's a useful title and it's something new. They also are reading the book The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. So why pick that book? Well, true talk. The Kite Runner used to be the book that I used with AP every summer reading assignment. It was a book that was taught to me by Gail Adcock. It was shared with me by Amy Hawkins. If you'll go back and listen to our previous episode where we talked about The Kite Runner, we share a lot of those experiences of how it came down into my hands and my eyes. So there's a lot of generational importance for the book to me. But also, I think once you read it, dude, you see just how beautiful a book this is. And beauty is not always fun and enjoyable. It's full of heartbreak. It's full of sadness. It's full of shame. It's full of transgressions that I don't know that you can ever come back from that. I don't know that you can ever make that right again. And isn't that a pretty human experience to be confronted with the idea that I may not be redeemable? I may not be fixable. Maybe there's nothing good about me. We all, at some point in our darkest days, have that assumption about ourselves. But the Kite Runner also shows us that there's a possibility for redemption. That even though you feel like you're not worth being saved, there's something good about you that can change. You can be a better person. And you know what? Maybe you can make things right. Honors is reading The Alchemist. Why that book? Well, it's a brief book, and I'm pairing it with The Odyssey this summer, so I wanted it to be something short. But as I've said many times before, The Alchemist is a book that is just annually celebrated as a great work of meaningful writing, and I had never read it until about, 10 years ago. And I read it at the start of summer break. It took me all of 2 days. And boy, it really elevated me to cloud 9 on just feeling meaningful, feeling inspired, feeling hopeful. I had just come off a semester where I was feeling really dark about my career. And then I read this book. And 2 days later, I'm feeling like, yes, thank you, God. That is the book I needed to read right now, because it's also about me. All of these books are not just about our characters, they're about you. It's an initiation story, and I think that's important for kids. We talk about initiation stories in our first 6 weeks, that this is supposed to be a kind of story that features the passing of the torch, one generation leaning down to the next, teaching you, here's what it means to be an adult. Here's what it means to be a man, a woman. Here, we're graduating you into the true world of adulthood. And a lot of times that means letting the scales fall from your eyes, letting the blindness slip away, and see that the world is not exactly what you assumed it was on the front. But it's beautiful and it's inspiring and feel good. We're also reading the graphic novel version of the Odyssey. Why? Well, baby, because it's a foundation to Western literature. Now, I always tell kids, why do we read Shakespeare? Why do we read Beowulf? Why do we read these things in class? Well, how much can you know about yourself if you don't know the culture that you come from? And every time I'm reminded of my first year with parent-teacher conferences. And you get so frustrated with some kid in class who's always interrupting and he's always blurting out, and he sometimes says the most awful mean things. And why is he like that? And then you sit down with his family and suddenly all questions are answered, where you are just, aha, this is why he behaves the way he does. And the same thing is true for me too. If you ever wonder, why is Crockett like that? Why does Jason Crockett act that way? Why does he get so irritable sometimes? Or why does he think, blah, 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 blah? Well, look at the family that he came from. Look at the generation in which he was raised. Look at the circumstances and the home life he comes from. And you think, that's why he is the way he is. Well, the same thing is true with Western society, whether it's European or here in the Americas. We are the descendants of a culture that was originally informed by tellings like the Odyssey and the Iliad. And this is a universal truth, we are the stories we keep telling ourselves. You say a thing enough times and it becomes believed. It becomes truth. You say a thing enough times and people start to believe it and behave that way. We're talking about thousands of years that have gone by with the telling of the Odyssey. And it's not just about Odysseus. It's about the human in search of blank. Plus, it's an epic, and we get to talk about the epic form as well during the semester. But you know what? Each one of these, it kind of also exercises a different kind of, I don't know if you could call it intellectual muscle, or maybe like a spiritual muscle or a perceptional kind of muscle in the human being. And I like that angle to it as well. The importance of being earnest, our comedy, it's approaching wit. There's all different kinds of comedy that are out there. There's slapstick and there's, vulgar comedy, but this one is high-minded comedy. And if you can be sarcastic, if you can come off with a really witty turn of phrase just off the top of your head, that's a hallmark trait of intellect, of sharp thinking, of a great mind at work. And plus, it's just enjoyable too. It gets to the truth of things using as few words as possible. The Kite Runner, that's a novel about empathy and redemption. But you know what? Not just, I'm sorry, and now I'm forgiven. Redemption has to come alongside accountability, that we have to cop to the things. Our pastor says, when you mess up, you fess up, and then you move on. That's kind of true. The Odyssey, it's also about redemption. And I think it's also a story about realizing that we are often the source of our own mistakes. I was watching the movie this week and I was reminded again of that line that comes up over and over. The pains men take only to come to pain. The things we do, the grief we bring down on our heads. Why? Just to come to more grief. And The Alchemist, well, that's about realization, about beginning to see that there's so much more to the world, the universe, to other people than you daily realize. Getting to teach high school, getting to read these books, getting to have these conversations, you have a unique opportunity to live life alongside so many different other varieties of life. Getting to read these books allows you the unique opportunity to live lives that you otherwise wouldn't physically be able to live. So last of all, what are some lessons that I've noticed overlapping in my own summer reading? Well, hopefully that you've been picking up on your own that we get to talk about, and I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say about those things. I think that, good writing is going to be universal. And there's a few obvious truths that I just keep seeing over and over and over in the things I've read this summer. Obvious truth number one is probably that, we are all out to discover who we really are or who we're really becoming. When we talk about the hero's path, when we talk about the how to read literature like a professor, when we talk about the experiences these characters have over and over and over, it comes back to this ain't about the character. It's about us, the reader. It's about us, the human being. Santiago thinks that, my treasure lies near the pyramids. And here is a glassmaker, and here is a student, and here is a girl that I know, and here is this. But really, 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 who are these people? Because they're all living lives of their own that are complicated and not too different from you, Santiago. And Santiago, who are you really? Because you're not just some shepherd boy. And that treasure that you have been promised lies buried at the pyramids. Really, 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 what is the treasure in your life? And where is it ultimately going to lead you? In The Importance of Being Earnest, Jack Worthing. Who are you really, Jack Worthing? Because you've been telling people that you're a guy named Ernest just to get out of having to go to certain functions. But really, are you even Jack Worthing? Odysseus, when he finally returns home to Ithaca, comes disguised as an old man, a beggar, and then gets to reveal himself to be, I am this person. He gets to reveal himself as the man he truly is. And boy, I love that part in the new movie. If you go to watch it, the way that they use music to underscore that theme of the man, the identity, and how it finally reveals himself when he strings the bow and boom. Amir and Hassan in The Kite Runner. Heck, Baba in The Kite Runner. Sonabar in The Kite Runner. All of these people. Asef. Who are you really? Who are you really becoming with these choices that you're making in life? Obvious truth number two, I thought earlier this summer that I had stumbled onto some kind of original thought, but the more I've chewed on it, it's like, yeah, Jason, that is an obvious truth. That there's a universal yearning for and a search for home. That we're all spending our lives trying to find our way back home. I was a kid who was born here in Tennessee, but then my parents divorced and I moved to Ohio with my mom. And for years, I lived in Ohio, but got to come back on vacation to Tennessee. And it wasn't until I was in 7th grade that I had the chance, the opportunity to move back home. And boy, I took it. I windmill picked that. Just, yes, I'm going back home. And I can't tell you, it was like one of the happiest moments of my childhood of getting to move back home. But coming back home was not as easy a transition as maybe it should have been or that I had hoped it would be on the surface. Because now I'm 12 years old and I don't have a Tennessee accent. I talk like this Ohio kid. I talk through my nose. And y'all have this slang. Y'all have this way of talking. I know that I know some of you and I'm related to some others of you. But really, 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 I'm like an outsider to the majority of you. So coming home was wonderful. But at the same time, it presents its own set of challenges too. And, I think that's really common for our characters. I'm thinking about the prodigal son, that here's this Bible story about a guy that kept wasting his fortune, kept wasting all of these opportunities. And man, you come back home and you're feeling like, I am the absolute worst. I have ruined myself. I have ruined everything you gave me. Everything I've inherited from you turned to ash. I am not. And still, what do? We throw a joyous feast. But others, another son in the family, feels jealous of that too. Homecomings feel like maybe they're not as easy to return to for some of us. And maybe others, they put up a wall that I don't know that I want that one coming back home. It reminds me of experiences in my own family. It reminds me of Odysseus here in the movie coming back home. He finally makes it back to Ithaca, but not only can he not immediately just return to the castle and everything be okay, he admits to his wife, I know I'm not the man that left 20 years ago. I know I've made some really egregious mistakes in my life. You've got the hobbits in Lord of the Rings who are always yearning for home. That's been part of my personal summer reading this year. Santiago wishing that he could kind of go back home. The characters in The Importance of Being Earnest, like they are also out trying to find their place to belong too. And if you think that home doesn't matter to Amir in The Kite Runner, that home doesn't matter to Hassan in The Kite Runner, I think you've missed a huge angle of the book. And last of all, probably obvious truth number 3, that people can change. But buddy, true change is never easy, and it almost always comes about because of crisis. How many times have we known somebody to go back to a bad relationship that we know is bad for them? That, dude, that's toxic. You shouldn't be with that person. But don't they often say something like, oh, they're different this time. Oh, he's going to change his ways. Oh, he's not going to be like that anymore. He's changed. He's doing this now. Just because you put the Bible phrase in your bio on Instagram doesn't mean you're a good practicing Christian. Just because you said, oh, I'm going over, doesn't mean that you're a good person now. People can change. I do believe that there's the opportunity for it. But it's been my experience that true change almost always comes about because people are made to change. There's got to be some sort of crisis in your life that forces you to, because otherwise people find a way to be content with what Hamlet calls the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, that we are just content to sit and deal with some of these circumstances because maybe it's just too scary, or maybe there's going to be, a lot of risk in what we're willing to do to make that change for the better. Well, that's my talk about summer reading. And again, summer reading is an assignment for my students, but my dudes, summer reading in general should never just be about the assignment. Keep reading. Keep finding the things that you enjoy to read. I tell students in class that smart people read, and that's a gospel kind of truth. I didn't say they have to read Shakespeare. I didn't say they had to read George Orwell. I didn't say they had to read James Joyce. Smart people read, and they read frequently. They stay informed. A lot of people like to throw out that lame-o, do your own research. But man, I don't think they really are doing their own research. They're just kind of listening to an echo chamber. Smart people read, and they read a variety of angles too. They're evaluating truth. Do I really believe this? Is that an uncomfortable truth that I need to reconsider? Maybe I'm the bad guy. Did I get this wrong? Maybe I need to listen more. There's so many good things to be read out there. This summer, I've been reading The Lord of the Rings. My buddy Drew Haston and I, we assign a big summer read to ourselves. And Drew and Nathan Aaron and I have been reading The Lord of the Rings. We're coming up on The Return of the King to finish out summer vacation. But I've also been reading through a really fun series that is not going to appear in the classroom, Dungeon Crawler Carl. It is a really well-told story that it's a page turner, but I get that it's not appropriate for all audiences. I've read a new play that I didn't even know existed. I dug this up out of a corner of the internet, and you know what? I love it. It may even be something that needs to appear in my classroom. Christopher Demas Brown's American Son is a great play. They translated it into a movie on Netflix in 2019. So if you're not going to read the play and you just want to watch the movie, it does have the same actors in it. but it's a great story. Probably the most important thing I've read this summer, though, has been something that my friend Drew recommended months ago. Shoeless Joe, a book that was the inspiration for the 1980s movie Field of Dreams. Shoeless Joe, golly, is just one of the most emotionally impactful books that I've read this year. It got me. And we're going to do an episode about that and maybe how to use it in the classroom. We're going to do a review of it. So listen to it there as well. Shoeless Joe, holy cow. It's another one of these books that I think I would have given a pass to if I'd found it on the shelf at McKay's or somewhere. I'd been like, Field of Dreams. I like that movie. But then I don't know that I would have picked it up if my friend had not reached out and been like, nah, you need to read this book. And I'm so grateful he did, because that book, holy cow, has meant so much to me this summer. There's a lot of things that you need to be reading that are out there, and I hope you take the opportunity for it. And you know what? I'm excited to see what you come up with for your own summer reading this year too. If you have questions, reach out to us. Let us know. I'm always going to be available. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer break and enjoy the rest of our summer series. With Honors is a Free Zone radio production, created here in Sparta, Tennessee. Thanks for spending your summer with us on the radio. If you enjoyed this content, please give us a like, share the link with someone you know, or give us a 5-star rating, and hit that subscribe button for more. Word of mouth might be the best advertising, but clicking like and subscribe really does help keep us afloat and visible in all the platforms. And we want to keep working to bring you even more episodes next season. Stick with us for the big summer read of 2026, The Lord of the Rings. We're taking the book chunk by chunk, volume by volume this summer, starting with The Fellowship of the Ring. Read along with us. Send us all your thoughts and questions, and let us know if you want to be on the show too. And go listen to this week's episodes from our other show, Second Stage, and our brother podcast, A Deadman's Books. They make for great listening while you're tanning by the pool, or mowing the yard, or driving on that 8-hour family trip. You can find all our shows here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to great content.
Hey everyone, my name is Drew, and I want to talk to you about my show, A Deadman's Books. The show was created with the mindset of whenever I pass away, as morbidly as that sounds, that my children would inherit my books. And of all the things that I'm going to pass down to them, I think that that's the one thing that I want them to make sure that they keep and go through on their own time. But I want to be there next to them whenever they read these things. And so I created a podcast so that they could go back and listen to me and my friends and other people as we read through these books and what we had to think about it. But it's grown to so much more. We've got authors we interview. We talk about everyday life. We talk about how literature connects to life. All of those things in one place. And now we want you to come along with us and join us. This is a podcast not just for my kids, but for everyone who loves to read, everyone who loves a good story, everyone who's a parent, everyone who's a teacher, everyone who just enjoys literature. This is a place to come. So come join us every Monday on A Deadman's Books.